My wife's secret Hawaiian affair was finally exposed. What she thought would be a sweet escape with her lover turned into an inescapable nightmare I carefully orchestrated. She was arrested right at the airport, her boyfriend was sentenced to prison, and our marriage went up in flames, reduced to ashes in the fire of betrayal. Welcome to Storytime Reddit, everyone. I never thought a regular morning could shatter every illusion I ever had about my marriage. That day, our alarm didn't go off because of a power outage during the night, so both my wife and I woke up late and rushed to get ready for work. She seemed more in a hurry than usual, saying she had to get to the gym early to train a client. I was calmer, since my office was only a 15-minute drive from our house. Normally, before leaving, she'd check her personal email for a few minutes, but she was in such a rush that she left her laptop open. As I went to shut it down for her, an email subject line popped up. Aloha to a great time. Instantly, I felt uneasy. And that gut feeling? It wasn't wrong. I clicked on the email. And just like that, the world I thought I knew collapsed in an instant. The email was from some guy named Gary, planning a romantic trip to Hawaii with my wife Kathy scheduled exactly during the 2 weeks I was going to be away on a business trip. They had everything planned, every day, every location, every beach. I could barely believe what I was seeing. Kathy, the woman I had loved for 12 years, the life partner I believed was my soulmate, was cheating on me in the most shameless and enthusiastic way. We met through mutual friends. She was a yoga instructor, full of energy, into healthy eating and passionate about nature. I worked in marketing with a love for sports and the outdoors. We were considered an ideal couple by many, tall, fit, with stable careers and shared interests. I used to think I was lucky. It wasn't love at first sight, but we had a great friendship that blossomed into love and eventually into marriage. And I truly believed everything was fine. Until that morning, after a few minutes of shock, I couldn't stop myself from digging into her inbox. Kathy wasn't exactly tech-savvy while I worked with computers every day. It only took a few clicks for me to find a folder named Trips, and inside it were dozens of intimate email exchanges between her and Gary spanning over 6 months. It wasn't just about Hawaii. It was a full-blown affair, carefully nurtured, full of sweet promises, secret selfies, and meetings after work that she had lied to me about, telling me she had overtime or was training a VIP client. What hurt the most wasn't that they were planning a getaway, it was that Kathy showed no sign of guilt. In her emails, she was excitedly talking about the new bikinis she had bought and all the wild things they'd do while I was away. I felt sick, and the saddest part? I still had to get dressed and go to work like nothing had happened. But I couldn't just sit still. Before leaving the house, I copied the entire email folder onto a USB drive and hid it. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with it yet. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let her and Gary get away with this. Not a chance. If they wanted to turn that Hawaii trip into paradise, I was going to make sure it turned into hell. Once I'd calmed down, I went home that afternoon and spent hours in front of the screen, reading and rereading every email and message between Kathy and that guy Gary. I didn't understand. I wasn't a perfect husband, but I always tried. I listened, I shared, I worked hard to make sure our life together was stable. I didn't see any cracks, no major distance, no serious arguments. And yet behind my back, she was planning a trip to Hawaii with him while I was preparing for a business trip that could be a major turning point in my career. Before we left the diner, I looked him dead in the eyes. No one knows where this is going or who it's for, right? Steve clapped me on the shoulder. I don't ask, you don't tell. Old rules, man. We agreed to meet again in a week. Same place for the exchange. As for me, after that meeting, I went right back to reviewing the footage from the house. Gary was coming over more often than I expected, at least twice a week, always during the mornings or midday. The two of them had dropped all pretense. They acted like they lived there together in the house I was paying the mortgage on. But my patience wasn't fueled by pain anymore, had morphed into focused intent. I didn't feel jealousy, I didn't feel despair. I just felt a plan falling into place. And if everything continued going smoothly, their upcoming Hawaii getaway was going to be the most unforgettable trip of their lives in a way they'd never imagine. 1 week later, I met Steve again at the same old diner. He brought a small brown bag, carefully placed it on the seat next to him, and sat down. Without saying a word, I opened the bag to inspect it. Everything I had requested was inside, neatly packed, discreet, and ready to be used for a purpose no one could ever imagine. I gave him a nod, slipped the bag into my backpack, and left right after paying for both our meals. No one around us paid any attention to the exchange. To them, we were just two middle-aged guys having lunch and reminiscing about college days. I knew my business trip was scheduled to begin one day before my wife's flight to Hawaii, and that timing was golden. With me out of town, no one would suspect anything when she left. 3 days before my departure, I faked a headache and left work early. When I got home, Kathy wasn't there. I checked our closet and found her suitcase already packed. It looked like she was counting down the days until she could escape to paradise with her cheating boyfriend. I opened the suitcase and carefully examined the contents: clothes, sunscreen, perfume, swimsuits, everything meticulously organized. It wasn't just excitement, I could tell. She wanted this trip to be the perfect romantic getaway. I carefully slipped the small packets into the layers of clothes, tucking them deep between personal items so she wouldn't find them while packing or unpacking. I didn't need her to find them. I just needed TSA to find them. Then came the riskiest part, breaking into Gary's apartment. Fortunately, I knew his work schedule that usually trained clients from early morning until midday. I had a short window, but that was all I needed. I had been practicing lockpicking using a kit I ordered online, and I had to admit I was disturbingly good at it. In less than 2 minutes, I was inside his small apartment. No cameras. No nosy neighbors. Everything went smoothly. His suitcase was already sitting in the bedroom, fully packed. I repeated the same process I did with Kathy's, placed the gifts at the bottom, layered his clothes back on top, and arranged everything exactly as it had been. But this time, I added an extra touch. In the kitchen, I found a tin can of coffee, the kind with a metal lid. I emptied the contents into a bowl, placed a few more special packets at the bottom, refilled it with coffee, sealed the lid, and put it back exactly where I found it. It looked completely untouched. And my hope? That security would be thorough. Once everything was in place, I left the apartment without a trace. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in weeks, filled with anger and pain. The next morning, I called a close friend of mine named Jack, whose cousin worked for TSA at the airport. I gave him Gary's flight details: departure time, airline, flight number, checked baggage info. I didn't mention Kathy. I only needed Gary to be flagged. I knew that if they caught him, everything else would unravel naturally. Jack didn't ask many questions. He just said, "I'll pass it along to the right person." 2 days before my business trip, I cleaned out all the cameras and audio equipment and wiped any trace that could raise suspicion. Then I left one final parting gift in Kathy's car trunk, a few items that would give law enforcement even more reason to widen their investigation. I knew I was stepping into a moral gray area. But in my mind, the price Kathy and Gary were about to pay was more than worth it. The night before my departure, I decided to give Kathy one final performance. When she got home, I was sitting on the couch, face grim, eyes distant, like I'd just had the worst day imaginable. She immediately dropped her bag and rushed over to me. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" she asked. I let out a heavy sigh, my voice low and strained. The business trip might be canceled. The client suddenly pulled the meeting. Everything our company prepared might go down the drain. Her face turned pale, and though she tried to stay calm, I saw the worry flash in her eyes. Not for my career, but for the Hawaii trip with her boyfriend that now seemed at risk of falling apart. "There's no other way around it?" she asked, doing her best to hide the urgency in her voice. "You've been preparing for this for over a month." I nodded, playing the defeated man. "I don't know. Might have to stay home all week if nothing changes." In that brief moment, I saw her expression freeze. Then she forced a strained smile. "It's okay, I'll be happy if you stay. I don't have any special plans anyway." I almost burst out laughing. Her acting was worse than I thought. But instead of losing it, I simply smiled and replied, "Just kidding. The client only pushed the meeting by a day. I'm still flying out tomorrow morning as scheduled." And instantly, I saw relief wash over her face. Her shoulders relaxed, the smile returned naturally. "You scared me there for a second." The next morning, Kathy drove me to the airport. She hugged me tightly, pressed a long, dramatic kiss on my cheek. I returned the gesture as if it were the last time I'd ever leave the woman I loved, and honestly, it was. The only difference? I didn't love her anymore. I boarded the plane and sat among my coworkers, calm and composed like it was just another business trip. But inside, a storm was raging. Every piece of my plan had been activated, and now it was just a matter of time before it exploded. As soon as I arrived at the hotel, I called home using the room's landline. "Hey babe, I did something dumb. I left my phone in a cab. Might be a few days before I get a new one. If you need me, just leave a message at the front desk, okay?" Of course, I still had my phone. I just needed to disappear from her radar once everything started unraveling. The next day, I shut my phone off completely and dove into meetings. My mind was unusually sharp. Every word from the client stuck clearly in my memory. I wasn't sure if it was adrenaline from the lingering fury or the anticipation of watching my betrayer face justice, but the energy it gave me was almost addictive. That evening, I returned to my room, turned on my phone, and checked for messages. Still nothing. Maybe they hadn't been caught yet, but I was patient. The plan needed time. That night, I slept peacefully, for the first time in months. On the third day, just after I wrapped up a long meeting, I returned to my room and found 3 messages waiting on the landline, one from Kathy, one from my father-in-law, and one from a DEA agent named DeFranco. I sat on the edge of the bed and hit play on the voicemail. Kathy's voice was trembling, desperate. "Babe, I'm in serious trouble. I got arrested. Please come home, please." The second message from her father was equally frantic. "Hank, Kathy's been arrested at the airport. She needs you. Please call me back as soon as you can." And the last one steady, stern, and official. "Mr. Hank, this is Agent DeFranco with the DEA. We need to speak with you regarding your wife's arrest at the airport today related to possession of illegal substances. Please contact me at your earliest convenience." I slowly set the phone down, a cold smile spreading across my face. The plan had worked, and I had never felt more satisfied in my entire life. After listening to those 3 unforgettable messages, I sat in silence on the edge of my hotel bed, emotions swirling between satisfaction and tension. Everything had gone according to plan, faster than I expected even, but I knew I had to remain careful with every next move. I couldn't let anyone suspect I had anything to do with the downfall of my wife and her lover. There was still one last act left in this performance. The next morning, I told my boss I had a family emergency and needed to cut my business trip short. He didn't press for details, just told me to try to make it back in time to close the big deal. I took the earliest flight home, mentally rehearsing the script I was about to play. As soon as I landed, I retrieved my lost phone and called my father-in-law. His voice was full of worry, almost begging. "Hank, you have to come back right away. Kathy's been arrested at the airport. They found illegal substances in her luggage. She needs your help." I feigned shock. "What? No way. She doesn't even use that stuff. Could someone have set her up?" There was a pause on the line, and then he confessed, "She was traveling with a man named Gary. Not a friend, someone else. I'm sorry." At that point, I hardly had to act anymore. The anger boiled up naturally. "So what you're saying is, while I was away working to support the family, my wife flew off to Hawaii with another man and got arrested for drugs. That's what you're telling me?" He had no defense. "Yes, but the important thing now is getting her out." I hung up without saying another word. When I got home, I checked the answering machine, over 20 messages waiting. Kathy, sobbing and begging, her parents urging me to contact her lawyer. Even the lawyer himself left messages asking me to provide emotional and legal support. I listened but didn't reply. Instead, I called the DEA office and scheduled a meeting with Agent DeFranco for later that afternoon. The DEA office was cold and formal. I was taken to a small room with dim lighting and a single metal table. Agent DeFranco walked in carrying a thick folder. "Thanks for coming in. We have a few questions about your wife," he said. I nodded, pretending to be confused. "I don't understand what's going on. Kathy's never been involved with drugs. She teaches yoga, lives a healthy lifestyle. This has to be a mistake." He opened the file. "Were you aware she was flying to Hawaii with a man named Gary? He's a suspect in multiple minor trafficking cases." I acted stunned. "I only found out after her father called me. Oh God, I really had no idea. I thought she was at home while I was away for work." DeFranco nodded slowly, eyes still fixed on me. "We'll be searching your house. If you cooperate, it'll go a lot smoother." I agreed without hesitation. That part had been in my plan all along. When the task force came to the house, I opened the door and let them search freely. They took a few of Kathy's pill bottles, some documents from a drawer, and her laptop. I stood there silently, arms crossed, fully committed to the role of the betrayed, heartbroken husband. Afterward, I went to meet with Kathy's lawyer. He got straight to the point. "If anyone from the prosecution reaches out to you, don't speak to them unless I'm present." I nodded and replied coldly, "I'm not here to protect Kathy. I just want to know why she did this." When the lawyer refused to give me more information, I left and headed to the jail where Kathy was being held. In the visitation room, she walked in wearing an orange jumpsuit, her eyes swollen, hair messy and pulled back. The moment she saw me, she burst into tears. "Hank, thank you for coming. I'm so sorry. I really am." I said nothing, just looked at her. Then, in a calm voice, I asked, "Why? You said you loved me. You promised you'd always be by my side. So why did you betray me and get caught up in this mess?" Kathy stammered, "I don't know. I just wanted something different, but I still love you, Hank. I really do." I shook my head. "If you still loved me, you wouldn't have betrayed me. You wouldn't have planned a romantic escape with someone like Gary while I was working hard to build our future." I stood up, my expression empty. "Goodbye, Kathy. From this moment on, I'm erasing you from my life." And with that, I turned and walked away without looking back. After our final meeting at the detention center, I went straight home and started packing up every last trace of Kathy from my life. There was no hesitation, no second guessing, just a cold, focused determination to erase what was left. Her clothes, her makeup, our wedding photo frames, the trinkets and souvenirs from vacations we once took, items that had once made me smile now made my stomach turn. I placed everything in large cardboard boxes, sealed them shut, and called a moving service to send them directly to her parents' address. On top of the largest box, I taped a simple note, returning everything that once belonged to Betrayal. The next morning, I called a locksmith and had every lock in the house changed. I never wanted Kathy or any remnant of her pasto have access to this space again. Then I hired a security company to install the most advanced surveillance system I could afford. Not out of fear, but out of a desire to reclaim peace, a safe, untouched space where I could begin again without shadows of the past. I cut off all contact. I ignored every call, left every text unread, deleted her emails without opening them. Even when mutual friends reached out on her behalf, I stayed silent. There was nothing left to say. Kathy no longer had anything worth hearing. I returned to work, closed a huge deal shortly after my trip, and was promoted to vice director of our branch. For the first time in months, I felt a genuine smile stretch across my face. The divorce proceedings moved surprisingly quickly. Given that Kathy was facing criminal charges, she had no room to negotiate. She got no assets, no alimony, no custody, and had to pay her own legal fees. I signed the papers with the same detachment one uses when canceling a subscription, no emotion, no regret. About a month later, I heard she had accepted a plea deal. She didn't want to go to trial and risk the evidence becoming public. She quietly pled guilty and received a 5-year sentence. Gary, on the other hand, denied everything, lawyered up, and tried to salvage his reputation. But the DEA had him. With the evidence in his luggage and his criminal history, he got 15 years. I didn't feel victorious. I felt closure. This wasn't revenge, it was justice. On the day of Kathy's sentencing, her lawyer called unexpectedly. "She wants to see you one last time." I thought about saying no. But instead, I said yes, because sometimes closure requires one final look in the eyes of the person who broke you. And so I did. Just once, and never again. Time moved on, as it always does. 4 years had passed since I last saw Kathy, and in those years, my life had undergone a complete transformation. The company I worked for kept expanding, and with each success, I climbed further up the ladder. Eventually, I was promoted and nominated to lead our new branch in New York City. Moving to Manhattan wasn't just a career move, it was symbolic. It marked the moment I finally stepped out of the ashes of my old life and began something entirely new. I sold the house that had once been filled with lies and betrayal and moved into a high-rise apartment where the lights of the city never dimmed. My life became a whirlwind of meetings, projects, new faces, and at times, solitude. But this solitude was different. It was one I chose. I was no longer abandoned. I was simply at peace in my own company. Love was no longer a priority. I dated here and there, but nothing serious. No commitments, no long-term promises. After what I'd been through, I didn't believe in the permanence of wedding vows anymore. The idea of forever had lost its meaning. When people asked why I remained single, I'd offer them a calm smile and say, "I once loved the wrong person the right way." That answer always seemed to say enough. It wasn't bitterness, it was growth. I had learned to fill the empty spaces within me by myself, not by waiting for someone else to come and do it for me. Then came an unexpected day. I was in my office, finalizing a major presentation, when my assistant knocked and informed me that a woman was downstairs asking to see me. She said her name was Kathy. My heart didn't pound. There was no panic, just a quiet wave of surprise. I told her to bring Kathy up but asked her to have 2 security guards near the door and to call my desk line a few minutes after she arrived just in case I needed an exit. When Kathy entered the room, I barely recognized her. Her once elegant presence was now faded. Her long brown hair was dry, streaked with gray. Her face, once full of confidence, showed only years of regret. She wore a dated, ill-fitting suit and old shoes. She wouldn't even look me in the eye. "Why are you here?" I asked plainly. Her voice trembled. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't know about the stuff in my bag." Gary must have. I cut her off with a laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was so tragically predictable. Still denying it. After all this time, the phone rang. My assistant reminded me to book tickets for Stacy and her parents. I looked at Kathy. "That's Stacy. I'm seeing her. She's honest, kind. She respects me. She's not you." Kathy whispered, "So you've moved on?" I nodded. "I don't love you, Kathy. I don't hate you either. I feel nothing. You took everything, but I rebuilt it, and there's no room for you in this life." I walked to the door, opened it, and told security to escort her out and never let her back in. She looked back one last time, eyes full of desperation. I said nothing. The door closed. So did that chapter. Now, when I glance at the old wedding decanter I once gave her, the only thing I ever took back, I no longer feel pain. It's just glass, a memory, and sometimes the best revenge is not revenge at all. It's rising above and living better.